When I was a kid, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Naruto, and Dragon Ball Z were all me and my friends' favorite shows. We loved them. We loved every single second of them, even if our parents did not understand why. But those weren't the only shows. Growing up, we had several anime that we watched that, while might not have been as prolific as the ones mentioned earlier, were still pretty damn cool. And this time, we have a pretty fun one that I like to go back and rewatch every now and then. An anime that has cards, talking magnets, and a group of friends from all over the world. This is Bakugan Battle Brawlers. This is Bakugan! The story starts with some actual lore behind how the game started, as is explained in almost every episode before the theme song. Gotta give it your all. Cards start flying down everywhere one day, all over the world, and kids decide rather than experiment and try and find where they came from, to turn them into a card game, because kids are cool, Jack. Low-key, I'd probably be doing the same thing. And I'm very in touch with my inner child. After the theme song, which to this day I still can't decide whether I love it, hate it, or maybe even a little bit of both, we meet our main character, Dan.
All set!
Dan is kind of a typical protagonist at this time. He's arrogant, he can be kind of loud, and he doesn't think a lot, but he does have a good heart, and he's good to his friends when he needs to be. At one point, when battling, a portal opens up, and he meets a brand new Bakugan known as Dragonoid. Or Drago for short. He and Dan become pretty close, even if in the beginning they definitely butt heads a lot. Drago being more calm and collective, while Dan is more hyperactive and more of a knucklehead. Like I said though, this is the only Dragonoid that's out there. While a lot of the characters in the show share a good amount of Bakugan, every now and then somebody will get their own, which is called a Guardian Bakugan, a unique speaking Bakugan that's exclusive to them. Okay, apparently a good 95% of Bakugan can talk, but the Guardian Bakugan are the ones who do it the most. Anyways, Drago wants to protect his home of Vestroya because crazy things have been happening lately. Most notably, Bakugan from different attribute worlds fighting each other and escaping into the human world. You know, portals opening like this are almost never a good thing in anime, are they? And one of the best things early on is just the dynamic between Dan and Drago. Drago tries to take these battles very seriously, while Dan just sees them as a game. And when we meet the main villain of the series, Masquerade,
call me Masquerade,
and he and his cronies are sending Bakugan to the Doom Dimension. The Doom Dimension is basically the Shadow Realm. They never actually use the word dead or death. Dan still isn't taking it seriously.
Why are you the way that you are?
Dan and Drago even get into a fight early on because Drago feels that Dan isn't taking his feelings seriously. At the same time though, Drago hasn't fully told Dan the story of what's going on with him and his home world. The two have a breakup and it actually ages a lot better now that I'm older. Eventually, of course, they make up and apologize and everything works out and they begin to understand each other a bit more.
And you can hug it out, bitch.
But Dan's not the only character. He has a whole legion of friends, known as the Battle Brawlers, the people who invented the game and are some of the top players.
Coincidence? I think not!
That's right, we have Dan's friends, Bruno, Marucho, Julie, Mr. Hotshot himself, Shun. Yes, I laugh every time Dan says that.
Mr. Hotshot himself, Shun.
And Alice. With the exception of Shun, the rest of the Battle Brawlers will regularly communicate online for any updates, such as Masquerade. Masquerade is a very serious and dark brawler, and he tends to fight dirty and clobber his opponents. He also tends to recruit people via brainwashing, and that's how we get a good majority of characters of the day in their battles. The mystery of who he is and why he's doing what he's doing lasts a pretty good while, and it's a pretty interesting part of the story, especially considering that the people he's brainwashing really are not fantastic at their jobs.
Yes, I will crush anyone who suggests that my strategies are anything less than perfect.
But Dan gets some backup as well. Everyone gets their own specific Guardian Bakugan. The brash, irritable tomboy Bruno gets Tigrera, a loving yet very powerful and wise, well, tiger.
But I believe I'm about to teach you the meaning of being a tiger, Mom.
They're a little similar to Drago and Dan's dynamic in my opinion, but at least it seems like Tigrera respected Bruno a bit before Drago did for Dan.
I must admit she treats me rather well. Isn't my Tigrera a little cutie?
Next, the wise yet sheltered Marucho gets the...
Mind if I play?
Be serious!
you mind? This is my party!
Well, wild and crazy Preyas. Preyas is kind of a giant troll in some cases, but I can't act like I never laughed at some of his antics. He legitimately got me to crack up at points.
Oh, please. I was in control the whole time.
Why you wanna break my little Bakugan?
The love-struck and bubbly Julie gets the kind-hearted protector Gorham, and they meet in kind of a weird way. Julie really wants to get her own guardian Bakugan. She goes to a canyon, he's not there, she starts crying, and then it's revealed that Gorham is just hanging in Julie's room on the shelf. Why did he not say anything beforehand? Never mind.
I was very confused by the whole thing, if I'm being honest.
But Shun has the most interesting story with his Bakugan, Skyrus. Dan and Shun have been friends forever, and they created the game of Bakugan together. But as they got older, Shun's mother got very sick and landed in the hospital, causing Shun to distance himself from Dan and the others. We even get a fantastic flashback episode where Shun and Dan are battling, and rather than trying to win right out, Shun wants the battle to go as long as possible, because as long as the battle's going, time will slow down, and as long as that happens, his mother can still live. You see the emotion, and you see Dan slowly start to put the pieces together, and it really confirms how amazing their friendship is. Honestly, in my opinion, they have the best dynamic of the show. It's so lovable.
I think it's game over for both of us.
In the Japanese version, Shun's mother passes away and she gives him Skyrus because she knows just how much he loves Bakugan. Meanwhile, in the English version, she just goes into a coma. I'm not sure that's better.
You're just using me to avoid your stupid grandpa. But what's worse is your mom's paying for it. There!
母さんは生きていられるんだ。
ゲートカードオープン。
一陣の風とともに病室の窓から飛び込んできたそうじゃ。しおりさんはそれを誕生日にお前に渡そうと。
Shun finally comes to terms with this, and he rejoins the Brawlers and helps them in their battles against Masquerade and others, particularly the top brawlers of the world. Masquerade brainwashes a good majority of them. We learn about Billy, Komba, Chan Li, Julio, and Klaus. These 5 are not really my favorites. They all just get brainwashed and they don't have that much motivation besides their brainwashing. I mean, Billy kind of does, but it's more that he's number 10 in the world rather than in the single digits, but that's not great. He has a good dynamic with Julie, the two of them being childhood friends, but outside of that, the rest of them don't feel nearly as fleshed out as I would have liked them to have been.
Organization 13!
That being said, in some aspects, it doesn't really matter, because these battles are awesome. Everyone gets their own chance to shine against the person with their same attribute, and all the battles feel different enough that they're all enjoyable. Heck, Dan versus Chan Li is probably my favorite one. In the beginning, Dan just fought with power, but now since his talks with Drago and more battles he's been in, he uses a lot of strategy, and he even takes out 2 of Chan Li's Bakugan at once. They end up getting brought back, but he still is able to beat all of them, so it really makes him look good. Julie and Billy have an emotional battle, and in a surprise twist, rather than Julie winning and setting Billy free, Julie loses against Billy, and her and Gorham are about to be sent off to the Doom Dimension, but Billy snaps out of his brainwashing, retracts the Doom card, and they're saved. That's what I really like about Bakugan. The good guys lose just enough that the bad guys feel credible, but they win just enough so they're not pushovers. It kind of reminds me of Shaolin Showdown in a sense. Unfortunately, not all of the battles go the Brawlers' way. Klaus and Marucho have a very one-sided fight, and to the sadness of many, Klaus wins, and Preyas goes to the Doom Dimension. It's a horrifying, chilling scene because you see Marucho just begging to have Preyas back, and it affects him for the next several episodes. Marucho's supposed to be the brains of the team, and he can't do his job right now because he's so distraught about losing one of his closest friends, and you genuinely cannot blame him. This actually leads to a little bit of conflict between the Brawlers. Marucho is sad and Bruno wants to help him feel better. Meanwhile, Dan and Julie are the ones who want to keep finding information about Masquerade and his goons. Honestly, you can see both sides of things. We all like Marucho, and we all want him to feel better and to get out of this funk. At the the same time though, there's dangers going on out there and Masquerade needs to be stopped. So you can understand why Dan and Julie are in the right, but at the same time, I like it. It's a good amount of conflict that makes sense between the gang. You even get a great little moment from Shun when he talks about just how Dan felt when he and Drago split up, so he knows how Marucho is feeling, even if the circumstances are a tad different. It's a cool aspect of Shun's character that he really understands the people around him, even if he is a bit closed off at times. If you noticed, I haven't really talked about Alice and her battles very often, and that's simple. Alice is part of the Brawlers, but she does not battle. She doesn't take part in any of them, and she seems more to be a strategist, someone who could win a majority of the battles she's in, but just doesn't brawl enough to do so. Towards the end of this arc, Klaus, Chanley, and Julio team up against Dan, Marucho, and Runo, and they have a 3-on-3 battle. It's a really awesome fight, and there's a lot of cool strategies implemented, especially when the plot twist reveals Klaus has Preyas, but without his usual charm, completely under Klaus's control. After the initial shock, the gang decides to work together and put their bickering aside. They temporarily get Preyas back, and the three work together, and in a shocking twist, well, not exactly shocking, it's been built up a little bit, Dan's Drago evolves. That's right, Bakugan can evolve. It's something that's been built up relatively subtly throughout the show, and with his new power, he's able to beat the bad guys and save the day. The rest of the brawlers are ecstatic, and the brainwashed brawlers are now free from control. Afterwards, the gang starts to realize that a lot of their information may be getting leaked to Masquerade, so one of the conclusions that they come to is that somebody might be a traitor, and they decide that it might be Joe.
Who?
The webmaster of their website.
Oh. Okay. Alright.
But Joe is actually a red herring.
They played us like a damn fiddle!
He does have his own guardian Bakugan, Wyvern, who appears to be very close with Drago. In fact, at one point they were lovers, and in the English dub, she calls him Drago Rooney.
Nice to see you again, Drago Rooney.
Yeah, that's something I've kind of been neglecting to talk about. The humor in this show is just weird. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad. There are some jokes that are legitimately hilarious, but it kind of feels for kids level at times with some of the weird stuff. I'm almost positive in one episode, Cycloid, Billy's Bakugan, says, "Shoot me."
Somebody just shoot me.
And Runo's parents also own a restaurant, and Runo's dad has Runo's baby pictures laid out all around the restaurant. And Runo's mom makes a joke that there are no pictures of her, and she brings up that's why she goes to therapy. Oh, goodness. Gonna do my best to move on from that. Anyways, Drago has evolved and the Brawlers are feeling good about it. Unfortunately, Masquerade is none too pleased, especially with his cronies turning their backs on him. So he rewards them by sending all of their Bakugan to the Doom Dimension.
I'm back! And I'm feeling nasty!
Now, I don't necessarily think I loved this story of these guys being turned against the Brawlers, but it is sad to see that their Guardian Bakugan are being sent away. And of course, Masquerade's Hydronoid evolves into Dual Hydronoid. Huh, okay.
Definitely not good!
He and Dan decide to go up against each other with their newly evolved Bakugan.
2 heads are better than 1.
But 3 is a crowd!
1 works for me, so that doesn't leave much room for you.
But in this, there's a little bit of an interesting story. Like I've said before, Alice doesn't battle, and she's starting to feel guilty because every time Masquerade shows up, she's not around. She starts to think that maybe she's the one leaking information to him, and that she might be helping him without realizing it. She puts an immense amount of guilt upon herself, and the Brawlers, in particular, Runo, do everything they can to make sure that she feels safe and she still feels like part of the team. If only they knew the truth. Dan and Masquerade have their battle, but before then we get this really cool shot of all of the Brawlers walking together to prepare for the battle. It's not the hour-long park walk or anything, but it's definitely up there on my favorite anime walks. however small that list is going to be. Dan and Masquerade have their battle, and it's pretty intense. I actually like how it feels more focused on Drago and Hydronoid than most of the other Bakugan in their arsenal. But in a surprise, Masquerade wins. Hydronoid overpowers Drago, and Drago gets sent to the Doom Dimension, and in a shocking twist, Dan goes with him. Dan goes with Drago, and you see just how distraught the rest of the Brawlers are, Shun in particular, and you can tell that Shun even has some tears escaping from his eyes, but to no avail, they can't save their friends. The Brawlers enter an understandable depressive state after this, and it's made all the worse by the fact that they refuse to tell Dan's mom what's going on. She hasn't seen her son in days, and she knows Bakugan has something to do with it, so you just feel all the sadder for her that she has no idea where he is, what he's doing, or if he's safe. I would complain about this, but it's really sold just by how well Runo sells losing Dan. She's heartbroken over it. She feels guilty that she wasn't able to do anything. Fortunately, Shun comes up with a plan to save Dan, but not necessarily by beating Masquerade. He tells Skyrus that he's planning on losing to Masquerade on purpose, so he can go to the Doom Dimension to save his best friend. He tries keeping the secret from the rest of the Brawlers, but they eventually find out, and they all decide to go together. They're reunited with Dan actually pretty quickly, and they realize that there's no way out until they're encountered by a group of very mysterious Bakugan, the legendary Bakugan. More specifically, the legendary soldiers of Vestroya. They want to help the Brawlers get out, but they also want to give them a test. If they pass the test, they leave the Doom Dimension, their Bakugan evolve, and they'll even restore all of their Bakugan that were sent to the Doom Dimension. This is probably one of the best arcs of the show because everybody gets their own battle and a little bit of character development, even if some of them are not always perfect. The best one in my opinion is definitely Shun. He goes up against a version of his mother when she was very young in a town where the sun never sets. So they can always be together, and it really just harps on the fact that Shun is trying his best to move on from his mother. I know I always watched the dub growing up, but I just choose to believe that his mom actually died because it makes this moment all the more impactful. He realizes that he needs to move on and that his friends love and need him, and he passes his test, the best one. Marucho's is pretty solid too. He goes up against a version of himself who's completely subservient to everyone he meets, specifically his parents, and he resents that. But Preyas wisely tells Marucho that he wasn't subservient in helping his parents. He was helping his parents because he's a nice kid who wanted to see his family happy, and that he doesn't have to resent a weaker version of himself, even if he's grown. And Preyas evolves, or multiplies, gives birth to Angelo and Diablo. In the Japanese version, we see Preyas shoot this out of his rear end. Kinda glad I didn't see that growing up as a kid because I would have been asking my parents way too many questions. Julie's is kind of interesting. She grew up a klutz her whole life, and she goes up against her sister, who was perfect at everything. She never hated her sister outright, but there was always a bit of jealousy, especially since whenever Julie tried doing something, she would always fall flat on her face. Gorum helps reassure her that even though she floundered a lot, her kind-hearted, funny nature was what made people love her. They weren't laughing at her, they were laughing with her. It's not the most interesting way of developing her, but it does work in line with Julie's character. Then again, maybe I just make defenses for her because I like Julie a lot more than I feel like most fans do, but hey, let me know what you guys think. Sadly, Runo's might be my least favorite. She battles against a younger version of Dan who she met when she was a kid, even though she didn't remember his name. She realizes how stubborn she's being and learns that she needs to listen to her friends more. I'm not gonna say this is a bad motivation because it can be good in some areas, but I don't know. I just sort of feel like this is just more of what we'd expect from Runo. I don't know. I feel like maybe they could have tapped into a different part of her character, but it's still not bad for what it is, just a little bit of a letdown compared to the others.
Nothing.
Dan has his test against a clown. A masked clown specifically. After he beats it, he unmasks the clown and realizes how many of them are there. As many as his friends. That's right. Dan's final test is that he has to beat all of his friends in order for Drago to evolve once again.
Did you kill him?
So what if I did?
For whatever reason, Dan is really distraught about this. I never really understood this part of the story. I mean, sure, if this was a life or death scenario like the others would be sent to the Doom Dimension, I could certainly understand Dan's hesitation. That being said, this is the fate of both worlds on the line, and I find it kind of odd that the rest of the Brawlers didn't get that message of beat everybody else and then your Bakugan can evolve again. I don't know, it's a weird way of setting it up, and it gets especially weird when Dan and Drago get back and lie that they completed their test. They keep it a secret from their best friends. What is with these guys and keeping secrets from each other?
Hey ladies, looking good.
I will say though, it is nice that we see Dan reunite with his mom and see just how worried she was. It's also nice to know that she doesn't exactly let him off the hook, because when he explains everything, she understands, but she still wants him to be safe. She even kind of gets on Drago on it in a kind of cute moment. The way Drago gets nervous around Dan's mom is low-key kind of hilarious.
Yes, ma'am.
To be fair, if I had a mythical creature that was capable of destroying other creatures, destroying planets, and a whole bunch of other scary stuff, he would probably still have to listen to my mom too. Anyways, the rest of the Brawlers figure out that Dan's been keeping a secret from them, and they all agree to battle against him. Predictably, he wins. Not a bad series of battles, but the whole plot of him keeping it a secret just never made sense to me and kind of took me out of it. But Drago evolves yet again, and it's time for them to re-challenge Masquerade. Dan encounters Masquerade in a coliseum, and they go up against each other in another really, really good battle. For some of the criticism I've thrown the show the past several episodes, I really do love the battles in this show. Some of these battles really don't get the love they deserve because they are intense. This one in particular. And shockingly, this time, Dan manages to pull out the win. Masquerade is distraught, but Dan offers his hand. That's right, Dan and the Brawlers want to work with Masquerade to stop Naga, Hal-G, and save Vestroya alongside Earth. Masquerade seems like he wants to accept, but he refuses. The mask drops, and we see his identity. That's right. Masquerade is in fact Alice. When I was a kid, my jaw dropped. I thought this was one of the greatest plot twists I had ever seen. Now that I'm older, it's not nearly as shocking, but it's still really well done. We see flashbacks of Alice putting the mask on and getting her hands dirty as Masquerade, and of course she doesn't remember it. At the same time though, it doesn't excuse what she's done, and to her credit, she actually fully believes that.
No. How can any of you ever trust me again?
Alice feels guilty, Alice feels distraught, and while the Brawlers are willing to forgive her, at the same time you can tell there's a good amount of tension, and she distances herself from the group for a good bit. And while the rest of the Brawlers head to Vestroya in order to save the day, Alice is dealing with her problems. She's dealing with all of the bad things she's done. And honestly, this redemption arc could have been done a lot better. We mainly see her talking with Klaus about all the stuff she's done, but I think it would have been a lot more impactful if she had traveled around the globe and apologized, or even did her best to redeem all the stuff she had done to everybody. I don't know, maybe if they had a couple more episodes to work with, but it never fully felt satisfactory, even if we all know Alice wasn't fully in control. She was very similar to her grandfather, Hal-G, who wasn't a malicious person per se, but she still felt guilty about all the stuff she'd done under brainwashing. Unlike Hal-G though, she at least tries to make up for what she did in a better way, but I'm still not huge about it. Come on, Alice, you think just because you said sorry, that means it's okay? You think just because you're nice, that means everything's gonna work out? You think just because I had a crush on you when I was a kid, nothing. Moving on. She finally comes to terms with the fact that she can use her powers for good, and she accepts that Masquerade is part of her life, until Masquerade seemingly fades away. But I actually do like that moment. She rejoins the Brawlers, and they finally realize that they have all 6 attributes alongside them. During this time, the rest of Earth is preparing for the battle. They see what's going on, and a lot of the allies and former enemies of the Brawlers are working together to save the day. It's at this point I kind of start to realize I've been forgetting to talk about Naga, one of the big bads of the season, and Wyvern's brother. He's, okay. He's trying to get power for himself so he can rule over all Bakugan. Nothing horrible, just very basic stuff.
You basic.
But sometimes being basic is not always a bad thing.
It's a human insult. It's devastating. You're devastated right now.
I mean, he was an outcast who was rejected because he had no attribute, but I don't know. I feel like the video game in some aspects did this better with Leonidas. The gang separates and all fight a good amount of very strong Bakugan, and these guys are not nearly as interesting as some of the legendaries, but considering what all the stuff we've gotten, they weren't bad for what they were. With all the negative energy that Naga has spilling over into the world, you see just how intense things get, but it's really awesome that all of the Brawlers' allies are coming together and fighting to save the day. They don't feel useless, they don't feel completely necessary, but it's still nice that everybody gets their chance to shine and everybody gets to work together. I wish more series had moments like this. It's not all happy though. Wyvern sacrifices her power to give it to Drago, and Drago has to go up against Naga. It's an intense fight, and of course, it's the end of the season. Drago wins.
End of story. Goodbye, the end. Any questions?
It's not all good though. With all the power Drago has, he's still not able to fully stop the worlds from falling apart, unless he becomes the new core. By combining the Infinity Core and Silent Core, alongside all the other attributes, Drago's able to become the perfect core to keep Vestroya together. And unfortunately, it's time to say goodbye. All of the Bakugan have to go back home forever. Or, well, you know, at least for one season. We still have toys to sell. Everyone gets a bittersweet goodbye with their Bakugan and move on with their lives. And to end the season, Dan and Runo go out on a date. Aw, that's really cute of them. I hope their relationship does well. Does it?
You serious?
And overall, that's Bakugan Battle Brawlers, and I gotta say, even now that I'm older, it still holds up. It's not nearly as iconic as other anime, but there are clear characters with great motivations and development, not to mention awesome battles, some pretty bizarre but memorable jokes. It's a really fun ride from start to finish. Not everything was perfect, there were some misses, but there were so few misses compared to the highs of this show that I'm really able to overlook it. Will I ever give the other seasons afterwards a chance? I don't know, but I'd like to think if they're anywhere close to as good as this, I'll have a little bit of fun watching them. So ready your shooter, eat some pudding like Dan's dad, and get ready to stand the MVP for flying everyone around, Marucho's butler. The GOAT! Bakugan Battle Brawlers is still pretty damn fun. Bakugan! Did you guys love Bakugan growing up? Have you rewatched it lately? Let me know some of your favorite characters. Who knows, maybe I'll give the other seasons a chance someday. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, be good to each other, and I'll see you next time. Bakugan Brawl! Huh, that is fun to say.
Bakugan Brawl!